When you have to shoot, don't talk.
All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us for episode 15 of the Trap House Podcast. My name's Justin Jett, and today's special guest is Ed Schneider from Kansas Trapline Products. Got to know Ed over the summer at some conventions and was able to get together at the NTA and have a good little conversation. And Ed's a nice guy and full of knowledge. You'll see in this podcast. Really enjoyed his company over the past few conventions that we've got to talk a little bit. And he's not messing around when it comes to trapping. He's not just after numbers, he's after quality too. And he's trying to eliminate all the little variables and things that could slow you down to make it efficient. And he's a great trapper, so I'm sure you'll pick up on that in this conversation. But check his website out. Gotta find him online. Also, I gotta bring up a hot topic here. We just got done with an awesome rendezvous here at Hoosier Trapper Supply. We promote it quite a bit, but I think we started in 2005, putting it on here at Hoosier Trapper, and I think this was the best one yet this past weekend. And man, I'm still kind of in disbelief, all the amount of people that showed up, that drove hundreds of miles, multiple states, all the surrounding states. Chapter 7B of Central Indiana definitely pulled it together, and a lot of volunteers involved. That's no one's working for pay here, so the volunteers are a big part of this whole thing. And while we're talking about that, I want to go ahead and give a little shout out to a podcast listener. James Goebel won the volunteer award from 7B, and his help was definitely appreciated over the years. And he kind of runs the announcements and keeps the ball rolling with that while everyone else is kind of running in 10 different directions. So thank you, James. We appreciate your help, and we'll see you soon. What else happened? A lot of people, I was saying, came from far. We had Missouri people in the house, Wisconsin, Minnesota, of course the surrounding states. I think the furthest was a family out of New York that listens to the show and watches us on YouTube and all that. It's just cool to see people make that trip, and hopefully it was well worth it for them. Everyone seemed pleased. Of course, we had vendors set up, demos all day long. We had our gun raffle, our auction, good pulled pork for lunch, and Jim Mahoney's famous rendezvous stew. That's always a good hit. Dutch oven cooking, maple syrup, the whole deal. Then a big one that was new this year, and I'd like to continue it, is live music during lunch. My good friend Sierra Farrell, she just got signed to Rounder Records, which Alison Krauss is on, and some other giant names, just to name a few. But she hit a home run, drug a fiddle player up here with her and a stand-up bass guy, and they rocked the house down. And her voice is something special. I want to go ahead and just give you a clip real quick, so just you can kind of hear what she sounds like, and then we'll get to it.
Well, you say the women in this town, they're just like gold. From where I'm standing, they all spend it over their nose. Soon you're gonna find that these girls ain't nothing but cold. Yes, it's gonna rain, but the sun's gonna shine on through. At the end of the rainbow, you'll be waiting for me. You said that.
All right, you can tell I wasn't lying. My friend Sierra's got it going on. Check her out, SierraFarrellMusic.com, or you can Google her, find her. She's on YouTube. She's all over the place. You can buy her digital albums and merchandise online. Just wanted to give that out, and just wanted to thank her for helping us out at the rendezvous, for providing entertainment. And also, with that out of the way, we got to get into our sponsors before we kick the real conversation off. The Hags Hags bracket made by J3 Outdoors, j3o.com, maker of the hags. Jeff Haggerty. We did a past podcast with him. Make sure you backtrack and check that out. He has a great story about trapping in Alaska, so that's always fun. Then we have Top Lot Stretchers Company. They have a nice website, toplotstretcherco.com, and it's well-organized website. It's easy, user-friendly, drop-downs. Everything's easy to find. They got a nice adjustable stretcher, which I've mentioned in the past. Check them out. Then also, of course, we got to give it up for Hoosier Trapper Supply. Find us at HoosierTrapperSupply.com. We have the lure, bait, trapping products, everything you need. And you know what? Deer season's underway here or anywhere. If you're out there, we do taxidermy as well. We'll mount pretty much about whatever. So just give us a call first, and we'll see what we can do for you. But I think that covers it. I'm going to quit talking, and let's get into it with Ed and Charlie. Thanks for listening. All right. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We got another podcast for you. Ed Schneider's here, Kansas Trapline Products. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. It's nice to be with the Hoosier people.
So if we're Hoosiers, what are people from Kansas called?
Well, we're the Jayhawkers.
That's
Yeah,
right.
we're a Jayhawker.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, it depends how you look at it. I know you got some Wildcats too.
Yes, we do. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it depends on which side of I-70 you're on, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You want to give us kind of a rundown of your history?
I sure can. You know, I'm an Illinois native. I've lived in about 8 states, from Virginia, North Carolina, Midwest, Iowa, Wisconsin, and of course now I'm here in Kansas. The big thing for me has always been career choices in my own world, but the bad side, and you think you're moving up and everything, and I hope I accomplish that, but the bad thing about this is you got to find new trapping land every time you go somewhere.
Sure.
So when you're in those kind of positions like that, you gotta learn a knack to get that new land and that type of thing. So that's kind of my main bio, as far as like a lot of guys, muskrats when I was 8 years old and so on and so forth. I did take instruction from a guy from Aquan, Illinois, near Galesburg. His name's Richard Thurman, on instruction on coyotes, and I was hooked after that. I think we all have that moment when you bite into it, and now you're a coyote man, and you're not going back to the coon, you're not going back to the beaver. And then a couple years later, I took it from instruction from Craig O'Gorman. So, you know, every year I hold myself in my own canine school, trying to give back a lot of the information that I've learned from a couple great trappers myself. So, yeah, it's a lot of fun, and more than anything, it's industries like this. We got fellowship right here on this podcast.
That's right.
It's a new friendship that we're building up.
Yeah,
Right.
That's exactly right.
So did you trap as a kid then, or?
Yes, I started out on muskrat, and when you live in the Golden Triangle between the Mississippi and the Illinois River, a lot of people know about it with white-tailed deer hunting and stuff like that. Well, I grew up there, and so I was basically on the creeks and small farms and things like that. I wish I knew how to trap the fox in the 70s, you know, and I just couldn't get any information. It was tight-lipped. I wish there was a YouTube back then. I'd have been trapping fox, but it was already a lot of pressure anyway and stuff. But when we were getting, they talk about the $40 coon and everything. I was probably more in that heyday. I was probably lucky to get 32, 33 and stuff. But that was good money for you when you're young like that.
Oh,
so, yeah, that was good money. The canines themselves, as far as going, I found out real quick that there's areas that have a good coyote and there's areas that have a bad coyote in the terms of sales. This last season, I think everybody pretty much from Indiana north probably got themselves a pretty good price on canines and stuff. I just wish we had more fox, even though the fox market's kind of depressed, but I love trapping fox. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I was a kid, we all started out like you did. We started out on muskrats,
Mm-hmm.
and it didn't take long. We were wanting to catch fox and we're learning to trap fox. But, back then, everybody started out water trapping, all the kids. That was the thing.
Yeah.
And nowadays, everybody starts with coyote, and then they're just scratching their head. It's like, well, how do I go catch a muskrat? Which just seems
I never thought about it. Yeah. When do you use a float set and then everything else? Yeah.
Where do I set this body trap or this colony trap or whatever it is? I mean, it's funny because – the things that we figured was pretty elemental. Now it's like in reverse.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. It is a new world out there, and it's a new financial market. Something that I admire the most is that the industry has grown. If you were in the 70s and 80s and haven't trapped since then, you're going to be in shock when you see the new equipment and the techniques and the different things, and nothing else, the openness that's in the industry.
There's no secrets.
No, there is none. I mean, right now we're having a conversation to competitors, which probably wouldn't have happened back in those days. So everybody was to themselves. So,
right.
Yeah.
And that is the nice thing, and you run into this idea where there's some of these guys still think there's some great secret out there that's hidden that only Craig O'Gorman can tell you, or whoever, or one of the trappers that have been around forever, and the only thing that they've got several things going for them that you don't. Number one, years and years of experience.
That's right. Yeah.
And some of them have just this incredible drive that just keeps them going, and I think that probably more it than anything. Once you have a good understanding of what you're doing, it's just this obsessive drive to just go in every day in, day out.
Day in, day out.
Yeah.
When you look at my own YouTube pictures or on Facebook, you're going to see me being fat. You're going to see me being skinny. You're going to see me right where I'm at now. I mean, I'm all over the board because by the time trapping season begins, I've been eating at McDonald's and on the road trips at these conventions, a lot of pork. And if you're in Iowa, you're eating pork chops. If you're in North Carolina, you're eating pulled pork. So it's a good deal. But you get on the line and you're working and you're working and you're working. And I want this to be a little bit educational as you guys do and stuff. And the one thing that I figured out when I was trapping, and I'm just want to paint a picture for your audience, and if I could find myself some tracks at one location, say we're going to paint the picture of the outside fence row of whether it's a bean or cornfield. If you could find tracks, well, you're already on them. So you're on location, regardless of where you find the sets. That's where they're at. The second thing is you put in at least 2 good sets, and the answer to volume is repeat that 100 more times at 100 more locations. You're going to have 100 coyotes. If you're going to put 15 traps on a small area that doesn't have the population, you're spinning your wheels. Now we're going to get our 1 or 2, and then you're wondering why you're not getting any more animals.
Right.
So the big secret is knowing when that 1 or 2 coyotes is all there is. I'll give it another example. If I'm in Indiana, there's some areas that's nothing but corn, beans with no fence lines, no anything. All you really have is enough to support a pair of coyotes. You get those 2, you move on to the next area, and that's the same way with western Kansas, where you got the crop changes, where you have some of that. It's good for a pair of coyotes, and that's about it. But if you have a feedlot 3 miles away and you're trapping, and I don't necessarily trap on feedlots, but the same thing would apply with a hog farm or a dairy operation or whatever. If you're on a particular travel way, now we can start. In that case, I want to start setting 3. I want to give the coyotes at least 3 different looks along their travel way. So let me paint a picture of it. We all think of the terms, if I see 2 coyotes together, that's a double. Same thing with the triple, so on and so forth. But if I understand how coyotes are moving through the country, and I've set up, and I believe I know how they're moving, if I give them 3 to 4 looks, and let's just say that in that scenario, I caught 6 coyotes out of, say, 10 sets along that travel way. To me, that's the same as the sextuplet because I understood the way they go. It may not all fit in a picture. They might be as much as 2 miles apart, but this is kind of my way of thinking. Now, you go to the next step in my world of thinking. The only way to stack them in an area is to whack them. I'm not trying to be philosophical or funny, but you got to get rid of every single coyote that's running that ground, in my mind, for the new coyotes to come in. Because if these old dog coyotes that we think about, whether it's old males, old females, if they're still kind of hanging around, it's harder to get more coyotes to come in. Now, where I'm at, I noticed that my brushy edges is a lot of the spots where I catch the coyotes. I think we can all appreciate good grassy areas and along an edge or whatever. But as new coyotes come through, what I'm willing to do is I'm looking for sign, maybe, and we're going to kind of paint a picture of a hill. But a lot of the new coyotes don't necessarily walk the same line. They're going to come in more in the higher ground. They know they're trespassing. They're using their eyes. They're using their nose. They want to be just as prepared to get out of the country in case big dog coyote decides to show up and stuff. Around coyote number in my world, where I can maybe get 25 to 30 coyotes off of a 1 square mile type of a section or something like that. Sometimes more, sometimes less. It's about coyote number 8 to 12. When I get the 8th or 12th coyote off of the property, I'm now all of a sudden I start getting new stuff. That's when I start finding sign of new animals coming into the area and stuff. At least that's what works for me anyway. And every day, out of every 100 traps, I know I'm talking about a lot of stuff, but people need to understand this. I'm probably only a 5% catch rate when you get down to it. I mean, I'll check 100 traps to get 5 coyotes, and that's something that I think that coyote trappers need to understand. It looks good at the end of the day. You're skinning 12, 13 coyotes or something, or whatever the case may be. Well, I checked a lot of traps to get to that many of them, and we don't want to show that on video. Number one, it makes us all look bad from one perspective, but on the other side of it is who's going to hang around watching a four-wheeler or pickup going around checking nothing in the trap. So, that's kind of my style. I don't know if that makes sense to you guys or not, but that's kind of where I look at it.
Well, I mean, it really does, because like if we're on a line and we normally work up to about 100, 10 dozen traps is our max, so
yep.
Roughly, and you'll hit that days where maybe your catch is 10%, but the overall average is always in that 5% range.
Oh, that's right.
And if the area doesn't support that many animals, you might be in the 2 or 3% range.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And every day, and I trap with a guy, Richard Johnson, and he's very talented, and I'll run my 125. He runs his 125 traps or whatever. That's how we get our 6 or whatever. But by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we will have decided that, well, I need to pull. I'll pull 15. He'll pull 15. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, we're running to a new location and we're putting in new sets. And of course, I do this full time for a living, so I'm pulling and adding sets every single day. If I could, to catch traps or to trap a lot of coyotes, if I never had to check a trap, I guarantee you I will make more money. If I just went out every day and put out 20 new sets, my goodness, the catching is really limits your ability to catch more animals.
Mm-hmm. You're right.
It's about the new sets on new ground. That's where the money is in my mind. And if I could, I could GPS it and let somebody else check every trap I had and have the last guy pull the last set and we'll start all over. I mean, that's a dream world, of course, but that's kind of my philosophy. That's kind of some of the things that I do and everything. When I was working a full-time job, when I was farming and things, now here's where I really was in my early days. I was probably around 125 to 175 coyote year guy. And again, I work at it. I've understood the system, so it was a little easier for me. And like you said, if I went out today and cherry-picked my spots, I could probably in a day probably catch 7 coyotes just on cherry-picking and just taking my premium spots, 7 out of 10 or something. But that's not going for numbers. That's just going and getting it done. But when I'm working, I would run between 25 and 45 traps. And that's about all I could do. Now, Saturday shows up. That was my move day. Maybe Friday, I might have pulled my traps on Friday and stuff like that. But come Saturday, I need to add more. I need to move to a new farm or something like that. Some areas are better than others. You can trap for 2 weeks. But, again, we come back to setting new traps. If there's anything a trapper can do to increase fur on their line, is you need to have a new farm to go to.
Right. So
from a schoolboy trapper perspective or a working man who wants to do it, if you want to trap 8 weeks, my question to you is let's just say that you can do one farm at a time. I suggest you have 8 farms that you can go to. So every week you're going to a new farm. If you're only going to go 6 weeks, you only need 6 farms. I don't know, is that oversimplifying it for everybody or not in here? I mean, how do you guys see that?
No, I think that makes really good sense. That's a good analogy, and I think we've always try to add new sets every day. When you're done checking, you're adding new sets.
Yep.
And the only day that we don't add new sets is the day before we start pulling. So
yes, that's actually the easiest days of the week right there. Yeah,
that's
you're
right.
Just checking.
Yeah, so those new sets are so important to maintaining a line that's going to catch consistently.
Yes.
Where you're not going to have those. Hopefully not the other than. Weather fronts or things that may affect your catch. And some nights, animals will definitely run better than some other nights.
Oh, you bet. Yeah.
But to keep that fairly consistent with your catch, that new ground setup is just so important.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, if you're talking leg hold traps, you talk about weather fronts. If you talk leg hold traps, I know we had a day of 27 coyotes in a day. But the next day we got 3.
Yeah.
I mean, it all evens out in the deal. But we had the storm came in around 2 in the morning. Man, you couldn't ask for a better scenario. The coyotes had already run. They're running hard. Everybody's running.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That's one of those days is like you're like in disbelief. I've never caught 27 coyotes in a day, but not even close.
Oh, no. It was. We were just on a cherry situation, and I've been on that same place or in that same area where we went from 450 coyotes for that area down to where we only got 180 coyotes, and that was the following year. They weren't there the second year, and that's all.
Yeah.
And we didn't find the sign. We didn't find the coyotes, and if I could, in a dream world, let's just say for every month of November, 2018, 19, 20, and I knew the property of every one of them, I would love to go to November to farm to this line on this year. Next year I'll go to this other farm and give it 3 years for my population to kind of build back up again without losing my property rights and stuff. But we trap, and like you guys, we trap hard when we trap. I see a difference on if I know the property from one year to the next, when you hit it hard, I see where my catch actually drops down on the second year. We just took out a lot of breeding animals, I mean, that's what we did. And I don't think I'm not saying that we're eliminating the animals because you don't ever catch them all, but we have taken the population down a notch. So if I could, I'd go to, I'd go to Ohio one year, I'd go to Indiana the next year, I'd go to Illinois the next year, and I'd repeat and go and start all over because my population would hypothetically be built back up by the time. And that's how I can really that's how I'm really slamming the coyotes and stuff, by making choices. Now, that 180 that we're talking about, that was last year. So this year, Richard and I have decided we're going to move on to another property, and we're going to try to find some new land. Now, the first year into a property, you're just trying to figure out where to go, So when I don't know a property, it takes me 2 years to really get the cream. The first year, you're just trying to figure out where your property boundaries are. Where is it? You said it's west of the grain mill.
Yeah.
and then,
Which one?
You're looking at these things, and you're half of it just trying to find out where you're at. And you do good, but by the time you're ready to leave, and for us, it's about an 18-day cycle. And about the end of the 18th day, you're like, well, now I know what I wish I knew on day one.
Right,
so, yeah.
I love that challenge, though, of that new ground setup. And trying to figure it out or trying to learn it. Or when you're done, maybe you're even still scratching your head. I don't know.
Yeah. And, I was on and this is probably sounds bad to me, but I'm on some pretty big pastures in Kansas, and I was on this one ranch, and it was about 3 miles by 5 miles. It was pretty big. And for whatever reason, the way I ended up trapping it, I never continued to I guess it'd be southwest. The next year I finally decided I would go drive over this hill, and oh my gosh, it was a beautiful spot, and I mean, so it takes a few years to really get to know it, and I thought I had it nailed, and I was wrong, know. I mean, there's the real cherry spot I still trapped the area I was at, but I made sure I drove over that hill because I know a lot of us are in cornfield and roads and every 1 square mile, a lot of Midwestern farmers, but you start getting into mountains and Western environment and stuff. Well, all of a sudden now, you only got 1 2-track road, and to the north or south, east, west, you might have a mile or 2 miles, 3 miles before you get to another road.
Right.
And so that kind of calls on us to figure out how are we going to get in on all the coyotes, because they're not all going to run the road. It's a good spot, but it's a tough one. So,
Right.
Yeah.
So, so when you're in those scenarios, then are you just setting off sign only then when you start?
I do my best to try to set sign. Let's face it. If I'm on, we'll just pick a cornfield as an example, and there's a nice CRP comes out it makes a quick jaunt into the field and comes back in. I'm going to set the point. I mean, I can't help but do that. I like to think of 100 sets on 100 locations, but when you're on a field, I don't know if the coyotes are running this fence line or that fence line, and generally on the same property. As an example, I'll put 2 sets and 2 sets on each side of the thing. I want to cover my bases. I set up every topographical feature that I think that looks good. Now, year number 2 is a whole nother game. I'm certainly not going to mess with the ones that weren't productive on the other ones.
Right.
So yeah, I'm always still a 2-trap person. When you get to know the area, sometimes you end up putting 8 in there next year. You know, if it's that hot of a spot, you're not going to waste around and get one or get a double today and a double tomorrow and a double the next day. And they're like, Ed, why don't you put in a few more sets here, pal? You know,
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, because you could have jumped it up to triple, quadruple.
That's
whatever.
right. It could have been a much better scenario there. So,
Right.
yeah.
And we're talking 2 traps as in 2 sets.
Yes.
So we're on that same philosophy. If it's good enough for one, it's good enough for 2 or 3.
Yeah.
And clearly, just like you on those locations that are extra good, then it needs some more attention.
You need some more attention and stuff. And it's a lot of it's always a challenge. It's finding new land. Eastern United States, you don't really have to worry about the water so much or whatever. There's always water someplace, so we don't have to worry about setting up ponds, although they can be lucrative, whatever. But now when you get out in the Western United States, you want to know where every stock tank is, and and you need to set up those type of things. Where's the water sources? And
see, our problem is that there's too much water, and it never stops raining.
Yeah,
and all we have is mud.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. In this last year, I don't care where you were, either you were hit with 15-degree weather in the 1st of November like we were up in the Dakotas, or you're dealing with rain.
Yeah.
It was bad everywhere.
Yeah.
It was bad everywhere. For those who had a good season, I congratulate you, because nobody else did.
It was well, and you worked and fought the weather for every catch you made.
Oh, it was.
It was terrible.
Yeah, and I think the first time a coyote comes around, honestly, is your best time to catch them. We talk about day 2, talk about day 3 as being the best day in many cases, and I understand why maybe the coyote comes back around. But shoot, if I look at my daily catch, Richard and I will get about 4 to 5 coyotes out of the 30 traps that we set yesterday. And out of the 12 coyotes we scanned, think about, that's a pretty good day 1 catch rate when you get down to it. And so that's the power of having the of adding new steel at new places. It really makes a difference on your overall catch rate, because by day 7, in most situations, you're done. I mean, you're just burning gas for one coyote that's going to hit that in 2 weeks. So yeah, it's a good thing. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what do you tell the guys though that call you up and they say, all right, I've got my sets out and I've got this coyote, they just walk right by and they don't even give a sniff, or they don't, and we've all had that call.
Yeah, and it happens to me, and it happens to everything else.
It happens to everybody.
Happens to everybody. So I'll tell everybody my 2 sets, and I've been around too many good trappers, and they're about the same thing. So set number 1 is going to be my visual dirt hole set, and Richard Johnson, he does what he calls I call it the RJ set, but it's very visual. You can see it a mile away almost and stuff, and that's to help them see it. Now my second set, if I could paint the picture, let's just say we have a CRP edge over here, and if I see where I'm going to find a spot where I may not see a track. We're just going to call it critter trail, Could be deer, could be possum, could be. But I'm going to go down along that CRP edge, and when I say I have 2 sets in an area, it might be 50 yards apart because I'm looking for where they are mashing down the ground, whether it's tracks or whatever, preferably on like CRP where the CRP bows out into the field. I'm going to be on that outside corner of that bow, and I'm going to put in what you can call it a mafia set, a trail set. You can do a double punch hole, but if my view is this, if the animal is already stepping on top of my trap anywhere, he's traveling 3.4 miles an hour according to the research, I need just to whoa him. You know, I want him to take that extra step, take 1 or 2 back pedals or whatever it is he's doing, and I need to hold his attention. Now that coyote, he should be in your set in my mind because he's already walking there. We've already identified the critter trail. Am I perfect? No, but that is my solution for the thing. And the reason I go down 50, I'll tell this story. I found a T fence line, and it was all Milo where we was at in western Kansas. And I went to the corner, and I put in my Shoei dirt hole set. And my friend Don Dickerhoof, Don went and he says, well, I'll put in the other set in. And I said, that's fine. Well, Don drove down 100 friggin' yards. It was a straight fence line. He drove down 100 yards, 75 yards. It was a ways down. And then he put in just a flat trail set. Basically, he did a double punch hole on each side of the trap. First day, he had the first coyote. He caught the coyote right away. And one of the things I liked about that idea is if I'm going to the jewelry store across the street on the corner, it's a good chance I'm not going to make it all the way to the corner. I may jaywalk and cross the street at an angle to get to it. I think there's a possibility that coyotes may want to do that. They may not always make it to the corner if something else catches their eye. So that's kind of what I do, and I think it was a good lesson for me. And, and that was, I guess, 5 years ago when I saw that. And, that's one more tip, that
Sure.
I can offer, and that's something that helped me out too. So
yeah.
They don't have to be side by side to be a double.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I get. Yeah. It's always cool, but
it's
yeah.
cool. yeah.
But yeah, that's a good point. And coyotes run big areas, you
Yeah.
know. So like you said, if you're a couple miles apart and you catch 6 coyotes in that, then
I think that's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm on some pretty big ranches, like I said, and you think, well, I got them all cleaned up. Here's what a good coyote. Here's what makes a good coyote population. And whether it's CRP or just plain grass or whatever, we know that they need mice. We know they need rabbits. They need to have occasional lucky turkey or deer that they get their hands on. They got to have prey, and that prey is always going to be in the grassy, brushy areas. That's the number one. That's where they're finding most of their game. Even if you go pheasant hunting, you don't go pheasant hunting in the Milo fields out in the middle. You hunt the edges out along there and stuff. So it's all about that type of an approach. Now then, if you got yourself just an enormous quantity of grasslands and so on and so forth, you really need to think about a lot of traps in the ground. I mean, give them multiple looks. And I would set up the bottom of the. I would set up the outside edge. I would go on in if I could drive in there. I would try to find trails crossing through the tall grass. I would be on the road. I'd be inside. But I try to match up as many different positions as I can because I don't know where he's coming today. He may not come to this side ever, or it might be a week before he comes back. So I'm going to cover all of my potential travel locations, and let's just call it that, travel locations. Yeah. And that's, if we got them all covered with a set of traps, better areas as you get to experience. Now we're talking 4 to 6 traps in that good travel zone and stuff. So yeah. I don't know why they go certain ways more than others, but they do, and I just adapt and go to that direction and stuff like that. So, yeah.
I think too. You were talking about having 100 sets out. You got to look at a lot of empty traps to catch a lot of fur.
Oh, you do.
Bottom line.
So
we all get the calls from the guys. Man, I'm just not catching anything, and I caught a coyote a week ago, and then I finally caught one today. Well, it's like, well, how many traps you got out? Well, I got 12 out. How many? Well, how big a ground? Well, it's on about a 100-acre farm. It's like, well, there's your answer. I mean, you're doing fine for what you're doing.
Yeah, that's right.
You know,
and I mean, me and Richard are running like 15, 20 sections of land, you know, to get our stuff, you know,
Right.
and some of it's better than others, you know, and that's for this month. That's for this 18. Let me back it up. That's for this 18 days. And then after that 18 days, we're going to move on to another 20, 30 sections. Some land we're on, I don't know. I mean, we can be as high up as 200, 300 sections altogether in our year.
Mm-hmm.
And so some ranges have more. And for those who haven't been out west, and it's kind of a dream, we've all watched Jeremiah Johnson and everything, and we want to go to Wyoming, Montana, and trap. But fact is, when you get out west, you're going to burn more gas just to get from one location to the next. You don't have the population when you go further up north and when you go to west. So everything starts decreasing at that time. So you don't have the prey species, and the coyotes are. And let's face it, in a lot of western areas, they aerial gun the coyotes when they really keep them under control out there. So yeah,
we ran into that in New Mexico. We've struggled in New Mexico to find ground that's relatively untouched or relatively virgin ground.
Yeah.
We have not found any yet. So,
yeah.
I mean, you know, between, like you said, and the predator control is 365.
365.
Yeah, and even though that coyote has a good value during the winter, they're still killing it outside of that season.
Yep.
So
you get that snowfall and watch the helicopter start coming by. Yeah. I mean, you're just sitting there like, gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you know, where we were out in the canyon country of Wyoming, the only place that we could really see good coyote sign, and these coyotes, when you're in that environment, they're skittish on anything. I mean, they're not hanging around. But the canyons is the only place that survives. So those coyotes would have a decent population. And anyway, but it'd be nothing for us to be skinning a coyote, and all of a sudden BBs are all coming out on the ground from when they've been aerial shot, and stuff. Yeah. Somebody got them and stuff like that. So
and unfortunately, that one survived it. So
yeah. And one of our methods that I can't count on 1 year of not having snow, not having the frozen grounds. And so here's where I kind of draw the limit. If I can get down 8 inches of only frozen up to 8 inches, I'll still kind of keep leg hole trapping and stuff like that. But when all of a sudden I can no longer even drive a stake at all, I mean, that type of thing. And at that time, I'm done myself putting in steel, and I'm starting hanging cable and stuff like that. Now, preferably for me, and everybody talks about a snowfall. Oh, I hear it snowed, or I've read in Trapper Man and different things. Well, it snowed last night, so I'm going to go watch and try to find where the coyotes are. I'll say that from my point of view, I don't want to waste my time on day one snowfall. I think coyotes are wandering. We all know that we've all gone up there and seen a coyote come to our set from the backside of the set. It's probably the way the wind brought him in, but he has no guiding now. So he just walks in and might dig from the backside. I think that's when we see a lot more of that kind of stuff. But what I'll do is day 3 to day 4, now the deer have made some solid trails through there. You also find your coyote sign in there. And so when Richard and I have done very well on snaring and having days of 14 and stuff like that, snaring coyotes, what we found is the day 3, day 4 snow, we find the trail, and it'll be usually in the bottom of the draws. And what we'll do then is he'll go one way and carry 6 to 8 snares, and I'll go the other way, 6 to 8 snares. And all you do is you set up every pinch point location, whether it's 30 feet away or it might be a nice walk, one or the other, but you get those in, and that's how you account for the porcupines, the possums, the skunks, or whatever, the raccoon, the deer, and just the wind knocking them down, or just for whatever it is, and you try not to have bad equipment. But every now and then a cable, you didn't realize it didn't slide right there, you know. Right. So anyway, you do that. But there's a time I think you need to, if you want to get fur, and I do want to get fur, we're kind of addicted to it. There's a time I got to cut the cord, and I move on to hanging cable. So yeah.
And that progression of the season. So you start in North Dakota.
So I'm starting up in the Dakotas, and then that's November. I usually give my instruction in October. I'll actually trap a little bit of my Kansas land in October. Now, guys, I know we don't have a season for raccoon. Our first season is not in Kansas in October. However, we can go after coyotes year round, and what I'll do is I'll go after the coyotes with personal instruction, and we'll get a few of them like that. They're not prime, but it's a good time to have on the line experience and things like that. And so we'll go out and we'll catch some fur like that, and then I pull them and I head into the Dakotas, head back down to Kansas for December, and then we'll be like you guys, head into New Mexico in January and stuff. So that's kind of our strategy.
Yeah. That, which makes complete sense.
Yeah.
Obviously, So,
I think there's some value for those of you that, if I had myself a good snow machine or something like this, and quad runner, whatever, understand that a lot of those guys up north won't even go out until they get the snow, until they get it, and they have the tracks, they have all the good stuff. But I see there being value of running up in the Dakotas or a northern area after it's frozen. Nobody else wants to be out in it. And I tell you what, snaring is premium at that time.
Yeah.
I mean, you know right where they're going, everything. So, yeah.
One advantage you have in that northern states with that weather scenario is the consistency of it. So unless you have another storm come in and dump 2 foot of snow in,
right?
In the Midwest where we're at or whatever, we have no consistent weather pattern. So one week we've got snow on the ground, and the next week we've got rain and mud,
and it's thawed out.
Right.
Yeah.
So we don't have that consistent baseline to work off of like you would in a northern state, generally speaking.
Right.
Clearly snaring when the weather becomes more difficult is definitely the best way to go.
Oh, it is.
We're not big snare people because of where we live and being up against a more urban area.
Sure.
So, but in areas that it fit, it's a perfect.
Oh, it's beautiful. When you got it, you got it, and what you're doing is you're making lemonade out of the lemons that you just got served.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
I mean, that's what it boils down to.
Exactly.
And it's a tool. And for people that's interested in cable restraint or snaring, I'm going to tell you this: it still takes a lot of cable hung to get numbers again. We're right back to volume, and I'll even say so far as with snaring, it's ridiculous the amount of snares you put out to get your catch. Like I said, the deer are knocking them down, the wind knocks it down, a hawk flew knocked it down. Who knows what it is? But in order to catch 6 coyotes on your check today, you need to have enough working cable to get it. So let's just say that one out of one set of string, 1/3 is going to catch. So if I want 6 coyotes, well, let's assume that they're packing up, it's cold or whatever. Well, I got to have at least 18 snares hypothetically to get that number of coyotes caught.
Right.
Because there's also avoidance. Richard had one that he saw in the snow. It went in, stopped, and it backed up. He didn't like the way it felt. You know what? The very next one, he didn't feel it, and it got caught, and he was, was. But I asked O'Gorman. He's telling me about this one good coulee that we were in, and he says, now what I do is I'd put 30 snares down here, and I said 30. I mean, I'm used to 2 traps or whatever, and Craig, and I says, well, what's a coyote going to be thinking if he sees 3 dead coyotes in the trail? He says, well, a coyote can't count to 3, and he's right, so yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, he can't count. So they'll jump right back in the trail and keep going and stuff. So
that is a great answer.
Yeah.
That we give these critters this rational ability of thought that they don't have.
They don't have, no.
They may be, I like Mark Steck's line that he says coyotes are just born scared.
Yeah,
They're
that's what it is.
just wary of stuff that might be a little bit different or feel uncomfortable. But that's a great answer. They can't count to 3.
They can't count to 3.
Yeah.
So yeah, and when I get into the trail trapping, and here's what makes a trail. I want to answer what I've been asked many times. Ed, I don't have cattle trails. I can't do trails. And I say this is if you have a clump of grass, a rock, a clump of grass and a rock, and you see where the coyote is now walking in between that is a trail.
Right.
It may not be a great trail, but it's a trail. And a spotted gland lure, a trap laid in front of it, a little urine on maybe a piece of scat that you put 8 inches out. That's a trail set. And I catch my consistently any coyote on a trail type of a set. It's just they're on top of your trap.
Yeah.
That's all we're doing. We're asking them to slow down. We're asking them to lift up a leg. We're asking them to find out. And I'll catch as many bobcats when you're in a bobcat area. I'll catch as many bobcats on coyote urine and gland lure as I will on the coyotes sometimes. If you're in the right area, every animal wants to know who's in the neighborhood, whether it's a raccoon or whatever, you know. I've had a lot of pretty triples on raccoon and on trail sets meant for coyotes, you know. So, I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's good stuff.
So in Kansas on the snare line, do you have to check every day, or
it's a 24-hour check?
Okay.
Yeah, it is 24 hours. Yeah.
I don't know. Sometimes if you got a lethal setup, you can go longer than some states.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What you want to do, and here's when you want to snare. I'm talking about using a kill snare. You want to wait till where the animal's going to freeze. Now I'm going to tell you, it's no fun skinning and a thawed out coyote. I admit that, but a coyote, you don't want that belly turning green.
Right.
So you want to go when the animal, when he dies and he starts freezing up. You know, Richard and I was in the Dakotas and in negative 25 degree weather in January. It was brutal. Why we were there, it was brutal. Yeah. And but anyway, while we were skinning them, and we would dispatch. We were actually trapping on these ones. While we were trapping them, the animals were freezing as we were skinning them. By the time we got to the front legs, we couldn't hardly pull it, and especially around the nose. You know, they had already froze in that area. You know, so there's something to be said for having a heated shed skin and let it thaw out.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's all good.
I remember, I think it was, well, I know it was. It was Andy Weiser, and he was showing his dash, picture of his dash, and it was like 34 below zero, some crazy thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, that's when I'm not envious of that
environment.
Yeah. Otherwise, I am. But,
yeah. I think it just, like I said, there's opportunity now. All of a sudden, it's negative 34. When we usually see that around December, January, late part of the year, into February. Now, here's the good news about that is I don't care what kind of education this coyote has had. When it's negative 34, negative 5, that coyote's hungry.
Yeah.
His prey species has been dying every day since October. There is no more until next spring, and he will go to any kind of a bait or anything. I do very well with pup coyotes in November, but not so much the old coyotes on dirt hole type sets. But you give me January when they're hungry, now they'll work a dirt hole, you know. And I know some guys out there feel they can catch every coyote on a dirt hole, but I'll say this is January is when every coyote is susceptible to being caught at that time. They're just flat out hungry. So we have a narrow window when the coyotes are still going to be good and before they start breaking and stuff. So
yeah, that time of year,
it gets tough.
Yeah. But you're right; they're very susceptible to bait, assuming you can keep your traps working.
Yeah, so that's the thing. Yeah.
So, do you use the bigger bait station draws with snares around the setup? Do you do much of that, or
so what? The best areas that I have found I don't want to call it a bait station. A lot of the cattle ranches I've been on, a lot of the dead in the old days, or in the last 10 years, have been pushed down into the draw. They got them out of the way, out of the pasture, so they can mow or hay it, or just they don't leave it in the middle. Well, even though that's an old cow carcass down there, I mean, it's nothing about it. The coyotes will still come up there when they're that cold and hungry, and they'll suck on them bones. I don't know what they get out of it, but they're hot. And I'd say to people, if you could ever get an established kind of a thing going, the deer bones get ate up pretty easy. You know, you don't really find them from year to year, but certainly the bigger frame animals, elk and moose and buffalo and your cattle and all that, if you got it and can get it in these draws, 5-10 years, it's still going to be there. You know, the bigger bones and stuff. So yeah, it's unique when you found it. You know, and we got into some of them and like, oh, another cow carcass down here. You know, another skeleton. And that made it easy. And so, but when we're talking about bait stations, I'm going to say that my education level has told me this: if I went out today. in my non-wetland prairie or whatever, and all of a sudden I decided, well, I'm gonna start a bait station, and I do this in the 1st of December or something like that. I don't really get coyotes coming in and working that bait station in the winter. I don't, like I said, Mark Steck said, they're born scared. Now then, however, if I have something like that cow carcass that's been there for years, they know it's there. They finally worked up the courage to go in, and they probably ate it originally. But the point is that I think that if you started your stations much earlier, let's say August, and then every few weeks you dump a little bit more into that station, whether it's just a 5-gallon bucket or whatever. Now you have the coyotes a little bit more acclimated to that new environment. Oh, he's going to be dropping a load of apples again, or he's going to be dropping a load of cupcakes. It doesn't matter,
Right.
I mean, they're going to, whether it's beaver or whatever. I would start these much earlier on in the year and then get them acclimated before you ever decide to move in there and stuff. That's a perfect world. I unfortunately for us, we're on the road too much just to even
To
think
maintain
about
something
just to
like
maintain
that.
that.
Yeah,
But it is a strategy, It is a strategy.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
The so are you putting up all your own fur, or are you?
I've gotten lucky the last couple years, and I sold a Groenwald, and he's got they have machines that can do the fleshing and stuff, and he's treated me very well with the fur, So I've sold him in the grease the last 2 years, and that doesn't bother me one bit.
Yeah. That's very time consuming.
Oh,
to do
very
that,
time-consuming.
And they're more than set up to handle all that fur and
That's
big
right.
volumes. And on another subject, we just did a podcast with Gary Groenwald, and
Yeah.
very interesting. And their perspective on things and how they do things is completely different than what
Yes.
the traditional way of marketing fur. And
They do.
Very interesting.
They're a very good company there, I think with anybody out there, I'll speak on their behalf and every other fur buyer out there. Really try to learn what a broke down coyote, the first early signs are. Understand what under fur is. Understand what guard hair is. Understand that guard hairs are on more than just the back of the animal. They're also on the sides. And understand what clipped fur looks like and stuff. Because I tell you what, if you don't mind a $10 coyote and stuff like that, and sometimes I got $10 on those, some of them iffy coyotes and stuff, but the fur itself, there's a time when you just need, if you're going for fur, it's a time to shut it down. Just quit trapping, if nothing else, maybe just move into another area. You'll start getting into good fur again and stuff. So
Right.
Anyway, that's my thoughts, because that as long as you got. I don't skin an animal that I can't sell.
Yeah.
And it's good for them, and it's good for all trappers out there. I took them out of the population. That's good for the wildlife control. But on my perspective, I'm not going to go with the effort and the work and everything just to show up for a dollar bill or nothing. You know.
Right.
I don't want to. To me, it makes my fur look better if it's all sellable.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was farming, there'd be some farmers. We had our finishing floors, hog farmers, and they would try to slide in a poor-looking pig. And well, I tell you what, when you start sliding in a poor-looking one, and it's going to stand out. And once they see the poor-looking one, they're going to start looking even harder. They're going to start judging you, because remember, this is all a subjective judging in my mind.
Yeah.
It's subjective. So we don't want to have our buyer all of a sudden like, well, there it is. I guarantee you this came off the road. You know, I mean, we don't want that. Good smelling coyotes, nothing rancid, no green bellies if we can prevent it, and go with it. So,
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, yeah, you want to be sought out as the trapper with the good quality fur.
That's right.
And then that buyer wants to buy your fur, and he's going to treat you
Yeah,
well. He's
that's
gonna
right.
treat you well. So,
Yeah.
some of these guys they go to market their fur, and they're anything that they can do to slide one in on somebody.
Oh, yeah.
It may work one time.
That's right.
It ain't going to work the next time.
No, when he gets around to processing, he's really going to see that thing and stuff. I'll say that when I know that for us that the getting the odor off of them, even to the point of I want them to. I don't want them to be offensive when they walk into a building. I don't know how else to explain that. It sounds kind of ridiculous, but I want to give them that. And something that I've noticed, now they may not agree with me. They may be telling me that, Ed, this is wrong. But I think a fur buyer would rather have fur coming in than fur going out. So even though my coyote, I can't be in 3 states at the same time trapping them. I just can't. I wish I could, but I can't do it. So I can't be there during the prime time of every dang state that I go to, or all season long. So what I do is I don't mind the earlier fur. I think my season numbers that I get and is closer to how well of a November do I have. If I can go into November with 400 to 500 coyotes, I'm on the right track. If I'm going in with 100 coyotes going into December, boy, I'm in trouble because the coyotes are going to get harder, and prey species and more movements going on and stuff. So anyway,
do you find that after the dispersal, that December lull, do you kind of find that to be true where the coyotes? I mean, you're still catching them, but where they're a little more difficult to catch.
So I don't know if it's as much of a lull from the perspective of the coyote as much as it is that the coyotes have moved and left. Now, I'm going to paint a picture, and I think this applies to coyotes. If you go into your good farming country, your bottom ground, and you're going to find tons of raccoon sign when the corn's coming up, and you're getting excited, and we're now September 30th or September 1st, all of a sudden the combines are coming in, and I mean, you saw lots of good raccoon sign. And all of a sudden, you show up there whenever your season begins, the 5th of November or whatever, and you go in there and you set up all this because maybe there's still a little bit of sign, and all of a sudden you're going to be real disappointed. You can be real disappointed because all of a sudden, like, what happened to all the raccoons that I was here? Well, the land's been V-ripped now. Yeah. So when you get into V-rip type country and farming practices, the better farmers out there, I don't want to say the better, but the ones who are on the money, they got the V-ripper right behind the combine, and they are taking care of business for next spring. Well, now the food source has been buried or gone or whatever. The coons are moving on to better pasture. Well, the same thing I think applies to coyotes. Mm-hmm. In my country, November 15th, the cattle are moved out of the Flint Hills. The Flint Hills is pretty much all mine. Me and trappers and dog runners and stuff. So now what happens? Coyotes are still running amongst there for a while. They're trying to figure things out, and I think cattle actually I think they eat a lot of grubs and things like that. So that's where they kind of hang around, and of course they got their mice and stuff. But all of a sudden, that lull we're talking about, I get a lot of dispersing coyotes, and I'm talking old coyotes, young coyotes. They're all moving now because a lot of their food sources moved. They are they're changed. So what you got to do is to get back into them, and Craig O'Gorman wrote about this, is go to the catty areas. In other words, go to the grassy areas, go to where they have something to eat and stuff. So I saw, and I've said this before in writing or whatever, but if you want to talk about dispersal or help animals move, go to Google, type in mule deer migratory route Wyoming. Now look at that. You're going to find these travel ways that they have documented with GPS or radio collars on these mule deer or an elk. Well, guess what? I guarantee the coyotes are running right along them same routes and whatever the case may be. They have a winter mesa, so there's times a year where all the big game is all down out of the mountains and probably at elevation of 6,000-7,000 where they can still get something to eat. And then anyway, I think it happens right here in Illinois, Iowa, Missouri, everywhere, I think. And it's not about necessarily dispersal, although that happens. But I think the older coyotes use those same routes when they go, as they're looking for new ground. And when spring hits and the cattle come back, all of a sudden, boom, everybody's back into their normal feeding patterns. All the things that we see in September change in October, November, and stuff. So, yeah. It's interesting. It's interesting to find that stuff out. So
it's all part of the trapping game.
It is. It is.
It makes it fun.
And I guarantee you that a guy who were to have a fall, let's say he's right next to a migratory route of geese that come in every year. into a fly zone, and they come in by the thousands. If I had the land next to that area, guess where the fox and the coyote and the bobcats are going to be during that 1 month, or that whatever. You got to take advantage of those kind of things when you see it, you know. And everybody has something special about their area. I know of farms that have pumpkins for sale, and they raise thousands of pumpkins. Well, them coyotes are out there eating pumpkins and stuff,
right.
Apple orchards and things like that. So you take advantage of it until the food source is gone, and then you got to be, where's Plan B, where's Plan C, And I'm a bait and lure maker, but I got no problems telling people. I'll go say November 15th, and I know they're still picking or just got done picking apples, and I see apple peelings in the scat of the coyotes. I've gone out and if it's warm out, I'll actually gone out with apple pie sauce. I go up there and buy it in the store, and they're already eating it anyway. So all I do is use an apple pie or pumpkin pie or whatever, and my stuff will come into use once it gets cold and stuff. But right. I mean, grape jelly or whatever. I know the guys up and around Erie, Pennsylvania. If it was early season and everything, I'd probably be using grape jelly if it was 54 to 60 degrees during the day. I'm just using this as an example. But
yeah.
That I ain't trying to get anybody from using my products, but anyway.
Well, that's the analogy to this would be, okay, coyotes, predators, completely opportunistic. So we have to be opportunistic too.
That's right.
We have to flip it. Well, not flip it, but we have to use that same mentality. Yeah, that I think a lot of us fall into a groove or a rut of doing the same old thing.
Yes.
But you got to be able to change and read the time of year and what's going on and that kind of thing.
And I get around good trappers like you and many others, and it'll be one thing they say or they do or whatever, and just like Don Dickerhoof with going up 50 yards up that thing, and all of a sudden he's got a coyote and I don't. Guess what? Ed Schneider's now driving 50 yards up there, and I'm on it, and Richard Johnson on his big CRP Iowa fields. You're always something out there for someone to pick up on and stuff like that.
There's some perspective, some fresh eyes, fresh perspective,
Yeah. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, clearly. So, Ed, you make a line of lure.
I'm making a line of lure, yeah. So I've been doing it. For a little over 25 years, piddling around it just for myself in the beginning. I think that's how we all kind of began to some degree.
Yeah.
And I was a farmer when I stopped farming. I'm an entrepreneur at heart, and so I started doing that type of thing. I also bought out a guy named Joe Stambro out of Oklahoma. Joe and I became good friends, and so he gave me some other education stuff like that. And as far as the baits and lures and stuff like that, it's been a passion of mine. It's a joy to watch people catch and send photos, as it is, I'm certain, with you guys. It's nothing. I think it's better to see you guys catch them with my products than, say, me myself sometimes. It's a lot of fun. And
sure.
I know you guys feel the same way about your stuff. The other thing that we do is, of course, I do private instruction, and I fly everywhere from New York or drive to Nebraska or wherever on private instruction, or you come to me. But the last thing I got is my trapping school, and that's always going to be the last weekend of April. And do you mind if I say what it costs and everything?
No, go for it.
It's $300.
Which is a bargain.
Which is a heck of a bargain. Yeah, and it's $300. You can come and camp on my property, whether it's an RV or a tent, and I have a building on the property you can take showers in. You're going to get fed, and you got 5 instructors plus myself. And we go out on my trap line. We get an educational permit. You guys, bring 3 traps, because I want you to put in my sets, and not that you can't trap. I want people to put in my set, and I'm not judging you. I'm just simply trying, and the instructors the same way. We just want to give you some constructive feedback, not criticism, but feedback, because if we think we could catch with that, it's a good chance you're going to catch with that, you know?
Right.
And it's basically Friday night through Sunday about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 1 or 2 o'clock. And we've caught a coyote every year so far. It's when you got 25, 30 people out there, I'm just tickled to death when we have one coyote. So we've caught a couple years, and so last weekend of April we're going to do that again.
Well,
so,
cool. And when you've got that many people and that much scent and pushing and that much activity going on, you're pushing.
Yeah,
you're pushing.
We're
kayak.
pushing it. Yeah. The main thing is by going on my own trap line, I'm hoping that you can see what I've been talking about. I mean, what does he mean travel route? Well, let's go look at it. And things like that. So it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah,
Just bringing trappers together for a good weekend in general. Just
That's
sounds
what it is.
Worth the fellowship. Of
Oh,
all this,
that's
like we've
exactly
talked
what
about.
it's about. It's the fellowship, and I tell you, it just doesn't stop. We never stop talking trapping, And we serve our breakfast at 7, and by on Saturday, and we bring out a box lunch for us on the line, and then evening last year we had a good barbecue and stuff. So I mean, you can't beat it.
Learn trapping and eat good too.
And eat good too. Yeah,
gotta
we
eat
always
good.
putting
You gotta
on
eat
some
good.
weight and everything. So, yeah. Well, guys, I want to say I appreciate you guys having me. Really, it's an honor to be with you guys, and I admired you guys from afar. So
Same here, and we appreciate
Yeah.
you taking the time to do this and enjoyed it, and hopefully those listening got a
I hope it was beneficial.
Yeah,
for 'em.
exactly. Hopefully
Yeah.
they learned something from it, and so anyways, we really appreciate you doing it.
Appreciate it.
All right.
And I will say, Ed, I got a new page going. I don't know if you've noticed it on Facebook called the Catch Circle.
Okay. I have missed that one.
I
but
just
yeah.
started it like 2 or 3 days ago.
Okay.
Feel free to put your school on there or
Oh, well,
whatever.
thank you,
I
guys.
mean,
I thank
it's
you.
open community. It's private for trappers, and we just
well,
want to show
nice.
everyone in a good light. And
Yeah.
Feel
Well,
free to pit whatever you want.
Well, thank you.
Yeah,
guys.
it's open to whatever. Yeah,
If
we're
you're
not.
a trapper, if trapping related, you're good to go.
Oh yeah,
So,
that's great. Yeah, and you guys will probably start seeing some of my stuff on there and everything.
Yeah.
So,
Sure.
like I said, it's to me, we're not in the 70s. We're sharing a lot of information. It's a lot of fellowship in this, just like this Kansas Trapline and Hoosier Trapping Supply. I mean,
Jayhawks and
yeah.
Hoosiers.
Yeah.
Stick
Jayhawks
together.
and Hoosiers. That's right.
Yeah, we got way more working against us than so we need to all stick
Sit
together.
together,
Yeah.
Thanks,
So,
everybody. Appreciate
yeah,
it.
thank you.
Thanks, guys. All right, one last thing before we let you go. We have to do this little product highlight I've been doing at the end of these shows, and I kind of like doing them because I believe in them. That's why. The products are good that Charlie has made. The Leatherwood line, we are definitely getting closer to season, and that's just, you get more and more excited, it seems like, each week, especially when this weather's about to cool down next week for us. Hopefully. It's a little too warm right now, but he's got one that's Early Season Predator, number 402, and it's pretty obvious when you're supposed to use it. It's more of a mild, warm weather lure, early season. Works great on all predators. And it says early season. You can use it all the way, to the end of season. It's great for remakes, but even in cold temperatures, it will work. Don't let that name fool you. What's kind of great about it too, it's got like a little bit more of a sweeter side to it as far as the smell goes, and that's kind of gonna help the canines, especially. They're less likely to roll on your set when it's like that, Sometimes I think people get carried away with too much smell and loud, stinky, skunky stuff, and then you got coyotes rolling over your set, and then they might flip it off, and all you have is some back hair or back fur in your jaws of your trap, and that's obviously no good. But so that kind of helps minimize that, But that's a great early season lure, like I said, and you might want to give that a shot and mix it in your arsenal, jump around and change it up. But we have that at HoosierTrapperSupply.com, or you can call us here at the shop and order some lures and check it out. But we'll see you next time here in about 2 weeks.